Welcome to Animate Bible Stories, where ancient truths come to life through powerful animation. Today, we bring you the incredible story of King Nebuchadnezzar, a mighty ruler who thought he was unstoppable until the God of heaven showed him who truly rules. From dreams that shook the palace to a fiery furnace and a king who became a beast, this is a tale of pride, power, and divine transformation. Grab your Bible, gather your family, and get ready, because this isn't just history. It's a warning, a lesson, and a call to humility. The Beast King in the Bible, animated Bible story of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. The king who dreamed. Long ago, in the magnificent city of Babylon, stood a kingdom of unmatched glory, wealth, and power. At its center reigned King Nebuchadnezzar, a ruler whose very name struck across nations. His palaces glistened with gold, his streets bustled with traders from every land, and his throne was regarded as second only to the gods. But beneath his crown and pride, the king's heart was restless. One night, Nebuchadnezzar awoke from a dream, sweating, breathless, and shaken. It was no ordinary dream. It was so troubling, he couldn't return to sleep. The images haunted him, and he was convinced it had a deeper meaning. Panicking, he summoned all the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers in his kingdom. The royal court was filled with confusion and fear as the king roared, "I have had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know what it means." The wise men bowed low and answered, "O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation." But Nebuchadnezzar shook his head. "No. If you are truly wise, you must tell me the dream itself and then interpret it. If you cannot, you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be turned into rubble." The astrologers trembled. There is not a man on earth who can do what the king asks. Only the gods can reveal such secrets. Furious at their failure, the king gave an order to execute all the wise men of Babylon. Now among those under threat were Daniel and his 3 Hebrew friends, Hananiah, Shadrach, Mishael, Meshach, and Azariah, Abednego. When Daniel heard of the king's decree, he went in and asked the king for time so that he might reveal the dream and its meaning. Daniel returned to his home and urged his friends to seek God's mercy through prayer. That night, in a vision, the mystery was revealed to Daniel by the God of heaven. At dawn, Daniel stood before Nebuchadnezzar. With a calm and confident voice, he said, "No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." He continued, "You, O king, saw a great statue. It was enormous, dazzling, and awesome in appearance. The head was of gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you watched, a stone was cut out, but not by human hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay, shattering them. Then the whole statue crumbled like chaff on a threshing floor, carried away by the wind. But the stone became a great mountain and filled the whole earth." Nebuchadnezzar leaned forward, wide-eyed. Daniel declared, "You, O king, are the head of gold. After you, other kingdoms will arise, each inferior to the last. But in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end. But it will itself endure forever." A stunned silence filled the hall. Nebuchadnezzar stood, then knelt before Daniel and said, "Truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries." The king promoted Daniel to ruler over the province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men. At Daniel's request, the king also appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as administrators. But though Nebuchadnezzar had seen God's power, pride still simmered in his heart. And a greater test was coming, not for Daniel alone, but for Babylon itself. The fiery furnace and the king's pride. Time passed, and King Nebuchadnezzar's heart began to swell with pride. Though he had once acknowledged the God of heaven, he could not resist the temptation to glorify himself. He ordered the construction of a massive golden image, 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, to be set up in the plain of Dura. Once complete, the king sent out a decree to every corner of his empire, at the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, every person must fall down and worship the golden image I have set up. Whoever refuses shall be immediately thrown into a blazing furnace. The day of dedication arrived. Crowds gathered. The music played. And every man, woman, and child, every official, noble, and servant fell to the ground in worship. All except three. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood tall. They refused to bow. News reached Nebuchadnezzar quickly. Enraged, he summoned the three Hebrews before him. Is it true that you do not serve my gods or worship the image I have set up? I will give you one more chance. When the music plays, fall down and worship the image. But if you do not, you will be thrown into the furnace immediately. And what God will be able to rescue you then? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied boldly, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us. But even if he does not, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the image. The king's face twisted in fury. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. The strongest soldiers in his army tied up the 3 men and threw them into the fire. The flames were so hot, they killed the soldiers who got too close. But then something strange happened. As the king watched from a distance, he stood up in shock. One there 3 men we tied up and threw into the fire. Look. I see 4 men walking around in the fire unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar ran to the entrance of the furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out. The 3 men walked out, unscorched, unseen, and without even the smell of fire on their clothes. A great crowd gathered, murmuring in awe. The king stood speechless for a moment. Then he declared, Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted him and defied my command. Nebuchadnezzar issued a new decree, anyone who speaks against their God shall be punished, for no other God can save in this way. The 3 men were promoted again in the province of Babylon. Still, even with another mighty encounter with God, pride remained buried in the king's heart. But God was not finished with him yet. The beast and the broken king. Though King Nebuchadnezzar had witnessed God's power through Daniel and the fiery furnace, his pride continued to grow. His heart was lifted higher with every conquest and every monument bearing his name. One day, while resting in his grand palace, Nebuchadnezzar had another terrifying dream. This time, he saw a massive tree in the middle of the earth. Its height reached the heavens, and its branches spread across the world. Birds nested in it, animals sheltered under it, and all creatures were fed from it. But then a holy messenger came down from heaven and cried aloud, Cut down the tree, strip its branches, scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump, bound with iron and bronze. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let his mind be changed from that of a man to that of a beast, until 7 times pass over him. Once again, the king was deeply troubled. He called all the wise men to interpret the dream, but none could provide an answer until Daniel was summoned. Daniel stood before the king with sorrow in his eyes. O king, he said, if only this dream applied to your enemies. He explained, the tree you saw is you, O king. You have become great and strong. But you will be driven away from people and live with wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox and be drenched with dew. 7 periods of time will pass until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth. Daniel urged the king, please accept my advice, renounce your sins by doing what is right and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may prolong your prosperity. But the king did not listen. 12 months later, as Nebuchadnezzar walked on the roof of his palace, he looked out over Babylon and declared proudly, Is not this the great Babylon I have built by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? At that very moment, a voice came from heaven. O King Nebuchadnezzar, your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away and live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox until you acknowledge that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men. Immediately, the word was fulfilled. Nebuchadnezzar lost his mind. He wandered from the palace like a madman, living in the wilderness. His hair grew like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. He ate grass and slept under the open sky. The once great king had become like a beast. 7 years passed. Then one day, Nebuchadnezzar lifted his eyes to heaven and his sanity was restored. He praised the Most High, honored the God of heaven, and declared, "His dominion is an eternal dominion. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand." His kingdom was restored to him along with greater honor and splendor than before. But this time, Nebuchadnezzar's heart was changed. He ended his days proclaiming, "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble." A legacy of humility and power. With a humbled heart and a renewed spirit, King Nebuchadnezzar returned to his throne, not as the same man who once ruled with an iron fist, but as one who had tasted the bitterness of pride and the grace of God's mercy. Babylon was still his kingdom, but the man on the throne was no longer ruled by ego. He spent his remaining years overseeing a flourishing empire with a surprising new tone, gentleness, wisdom, and justice. He became known not just as a great king, but as one who honored the Most High God. The people noticed. The royal court noticed. Even the foreign dignitaries marveled at the change in the king. Nebuchadnezzar would often speak of his fall and restoration, using his life as a warning and testimony. Let every ruler, every citizen, every man in power hear this: the God of Daniel, of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is the true king over kings. It is he who gives kingdoms and it is he who humbles the proud. I am living proof. Though he continued to reign with strength, Nebuchadnezzar was no longer impressed by golden idols or towering achievements. He was moved by truth, justice, and humility. As the years passed, the stories of his dreams, the fiery furnace, the madness, and his return spread across the known world. And with each telling, the message was clear: God alone holds the power over men. When Nebuchadnezzar passed, his legacy remained etched not just in the stones of Babylon, but in the hearts of those who knew that even the mightiest king must bow before the eternal king. Thank you for watching today's story on Animate Bible Stories. What did you learn from the rise and fall of Nebuchadnezzar? Drop your thoughts in the comments and remember, God humbles the proud but lifts up the humble. If you were blessed by this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Turn on notifications so you won't miss the next powerful Bible animation. Till next time, keep your heart humble and your faith strong, because every story here tells the truth that still speaks today.